The night my brother found out I had $10 million, he slammed his fist on the table and called me selfish. I smiled for the first time in years. What I said next made him lose everything. Have you ever achieved something great, only to have the people closest to you ignore or diminish it? How did that feel? Share your story in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe to see what happens next. I'm Alara Winslow. I am 35 years old. When I was growing up, my parents always liked my younger brother more than me. It hurt me a lot. I worked very hard and made $10 million, but my family only noticed when my brother found out about the money and lost it. When I was a kid, I felt invisible. My brother, Orion, always got more love and attention. My parents gave him money, gifts, and praise even when he made mistakes. I had to fight for every little bit of attention. I learned early that I could only rely on myself. I worked hard and built a successful business in science and medicine. I never showed off, but my family still didn't notice me. They were always busy helping Orion when he got into trouble or praising his ideas. I kept all my hurt inside and kept working quietly. Then, one Christmas dinner, everything changed. My brother saw an article about me having $10 million. He got very angry. "You have millions and won't help our family?" he shouted and slammed his fist on the table. My mom froze, too shocked to say anything. That moment made me feel strong. I realized I didn't have to stay quiet anymore. What I said next surprised them all. After that night, my brother lost something very important, and it changed everything. Growing up in our caramel-colored house felt like living in two different worlds. I was always trying to prove myself, while Orion got everything easily. Our dad, Malcolm Winslow, was a lawyer. He wore fancy suits and made deals in Indianapolis. Mom, Celeste Winslow, ran an event-planning business, helping at weddings and parties. But they always focused on Orion, no matter what he did. When I was 8, I saved all my allowance to buy a science book I really wanted. Orion, who was 5, got a huge Lego castle just for bringing home a report card with mostly C's. Mom said he's doing his best and patted his head. My straight-A grades didn't get the same excitement. One day, I accidentally broke Mom's special crystal vase while cleaning. Dad shouted at me, "Alara, can't you be more careful?" I had to stay in my room for a week. But when Orion crashed his new bike into a neighbor's fence, Mom just laughed and bought him a new one. That hurt a lot. School became my safe place. I loved science and experiments. When I was 10, I won first place at a science fair with a project about how plants grow. My Aunt Linnea, Mom's sister, clapped for me and said, "You're a star, Alara." Mom and Dad were at Orion's soccer game, cheering for him even though he mostly sat on the bench. My aunt's praise felt wonderful, but it couldn't fix how ignored I felt at home. The unfairness kept happening. When I was 9, I begged for a chemistry set to do experiments at home. Dad said it was too risky for a girl. But Orion got a remote control car that cost twice as much, and it appeared under the Christmas tree. I would lie awake thinking about it. Once I heard Mom say, "Orion has so much promise, we need to support him." I was getting perfect grades, but they never noticed. Orion's mistakes were excused, mine were punished. At a family barbecue when I was 11, I spent hours helping Mom set up tables and lights for her clients. A guest said nice things about it, and Mom smiled. Then she said, "My Orion worked so hard too," even though he had been playing on the Game Boy the whole time. I was so angry. Aunt Linnea pulled me aside and whispered, "You did the real work. Keep shining." But it still hurt. By age 12, I stopped hoping my parents would treat me fairly. I saved money to buy a used microscope and kept it hidden so Orion wouldn't touch it. My parents never asked about my science projects, but they always rushed to fix Orion's problems. When he lost a soccer shoe, Dad drove across town to buy a new one. When I needed shoes for a science camp, Mom said, "Use your old ones." Aunt Linnea secretly gave me some money to help, but it wasn't about money. It was about being invisible in my own family. Those years taught me to rely on myself. Aunt Linnea's quiet support kept me going, but even she couldn't make my parents notice me. Their favoritism hurt, but it also lit a fire in me. I decided I would not let it stop me. By my teenage years, it hurt even more. I was 15 and spent all my time in the science club at school. I built DNA models, planned experiments, and studied late at night. My grades were perfect. College was expensive, and Dad said, "You're on your own for tuition." So I worked at Main Street Coffee, making coffee and cleaning tables after school. My hands got burned from the hot drinks, and my legs ached, but every paycheck brought me closer to my dream. At home, Mom always talked about Orion's big ideas, hardly noticing my exhaustion. When I was 16, Orion failed his driving test twice, but Dad bought him a shiny Jeep anyway. I had to walk everywhere in worn-out sneakers. I saved money for a graphing calculator, while Orion got expensive headphones for free. I heard him telling his friends, "My parents always have my back." That made me feel very sad. When I turned 16, Aunt Linnea gave me a heavy book about biotechnology, promising new ways to help people with medicine. "This is your future, Alara," she said. I read it all night, taking notes and dreaming of new inventions. I hid it from Orion, knowing he would make fun of me or break it. Aunt Linnea's belief in me was rare. My parents never gave me that kind of support. The double standards kept going. At 18, I got a scholarship for a summer science program, but it didn't pay for travel. I asked Mom for a small loan. "Money's tight," she said. But a few days later, they paid to fix Orion's Jeep. I worked extra shifts at the coffee shop to save money for my trip. Orion, who was 16, drove past me in his Jeep while I walked home with my backpack full of books. The unfairness hurt, but I used it to work harder. The science club became my safe place. I led experiments, organized competitions, and coached younger students. My teacher, Ms. Calloway, told me, "You're going to do big things, Alara," after I presented a project on finding cancer early. Her words, along with Aunt Linnea's, made me feel strong. But at home, my parents ignored my achievements. By 19, I got into a top university for biology. The tuition was huge. I worked double shifts at the coffee shop, staying up late to study. My parents didn't help. Orion, at 17, started a business selling custom sneakers, and my parents gave him $1,500. It failed in a few weeks, and they didn't care. I stopped expecting help from my parents. Aunt Linnea sent me $60 with a note saying, "You're unstoppable, Alara." I pinned it on my wall to remind me of my strength. Those teenage years shaped me. The favoritism was heavy, but working at the coffee shop, reading science books, and paying for my own school showed me I didn't need my parents' approval. I chose biology not to impress them, but to prove I could succeed on my own. That determination became my foundation, driving me toward a future they couldn't stop. After starting college, I aimed for a career in biotechnology. By 23, I graduated with a biology degree. I moved to Indianapolis and started a biotech company. I risked everything to make a device that could test blood quickly and help doctors find diseases fast. The first days were tough. I had to convince investors to believe in my idea and work long hours in a small lab full of machines. But I kept going because I wanted to change healthcare and help people. In the lab, I spent days mixing chemicals, testing blood samples, and writing notes about my experiments. I sometimes slept only a few hours because I wanted to make sure every test was perfect. I was scared many times. What if it didn't work? What if no one believed in me? But I remembered Aunt Linnea's words, "You're unstoppable." That gave me courage to keep trying. Some nights, I would sit alone in the lab, thinking about how different my life could have been if my parents had supported me. I felt sad, but it also made me strong. I learned to depend only on myself. I had to. I couldn't wait for anyone else to give me help. My parents were too busy with Orion to notice me. Even though it was hard, I loved what I was doing. Every small success made me feel proud. When a test worked or when an investor believed in me, I felt like all the years of being ignored were worth it. I was no longer the invisible girl. I was someone who could make a difference. Orion never believed I could succeed. He thought he was the smart one. But every time he failed, my parents still helped him. That made me angry, but it also made me stronger. I promised myself I would never rely on anyone else. I would build my own life, my own success, and my own happiness. By the time I turned 30, my company was growing. I had a small team of scientists, and we were making machines that could help doctors save lives. I worked hard, but it was worth it. I had finally created something I could be proud of, something my parents couldn't ignore. Then came the Christmas dinner when everything changed. Orion found out I had $10 million. He couldn't believe it. "You have millions and won't help us?" he shouted, slamming the table. Mom froze. Dad looked shocked. But I didn't feel afraid anymore. I had worked too hard and suffered too much to be bullied by my brother. That night, I said something that surprised everyone. I told him that I would never let him or my parents treat me like I didn't matter again. After that night, Orion lost something very important. I didn't celebrate it, but it made me feel strong. For the first time, my family saw that I wasn't the quiet, invisible girl anymore. I had fought for myself, built a life from nothing, and proved that I could succeed on my own. Even now, I remember all the hurt and unfairness. But I also remember Aunt Linnea, the teacher who believed in me, and every late night I spent reading, studying, and experimenting. They made me who I am today. I'm strong, independent, and proud of what I've done. I learned that sometimes the people who should help you the most won't. But that doesn't mean you can't shine on your own. After a few years, my invention got approved by the FDA. That meant doctors and hospitals could start using it, and it was making a real difference in people's lives. My company began growing really fast, and soon I had earned $10 million. I didn't tell my family about it. They had never really believed in me when I was younger. They always thought my ideas were too risky or silly. So I kept my success a secret, like a treasure I wanted to protect. I didn't want anyone to try to take it or use it for their own benefit. My brother Orion was always trying new ideas too. He wanted to be successful just like me, or at least that's what he said. He made an online shopping app called GameShare. He said it would be a game changer for people who wanted to buy things online. But the app didn't work at all. It had lots of bugs that made it crash, it wasn't planned well, and hardly anyone used it. Even so, Mom and Dad gave him $50,000 to keep it running. He has big ideas, Dad said when I visited home for a short time. I held my coffee mug tightly and remembered how they had refused to help me when I wanted to start my own company. Mom had said my plans were too risky and waved me off. Orion's app failed in just a few months, but my parents acted like it wasn't a big deal. They treated his failure like it was something to admire. I stayed away from our hometown as much as I could, only visiting for holidays like Thanksgiving or Easter. When I visited, I never talked about my work. I would just say I was busy, or talk about Orion's new plans or Mom's party planning successes. Dad never asked about me. He was only interested in Orion. Mom would hint that I needed a real job like Orion, as if what I was doing wasn't important. No one knew that I had a company that was helping people and changing medicine. I didn't tell anyone, not even Aunt Linnea, who had once asked about my work. I was careful because I didn't want my family to see my success as a chance to ask for money or to show off. Orion kept trying new projects and failing, but Mom and Dad always helped him. I had started my company completely on my own, using my savings, some loans, and a lot of hard work, without any help from them. One Easter, Dad asked me why I wasn't as driven as Orion. I wanted to laugh. My invention was already saving lives in hospitals across the country. But to my parents, I was still the kid who needed to grow up and choose a real career. It hurt, but I stayed quiet. I focused on my work, growing my team, upgrading the lab, and getting new patents. People in the medical world said I was amazing. Journals wrote about how precise my invention was. Doctors praised it, and other companies were trying to learn from us. But every visit to Carmel brought the same feeling. Orion was the favorite, and I was invisible. At one holiday dinner, Mom praised Orion's ideas while I sat quietly, keeping my success a secret. Aunt Linnea leaned over and whispered, "You're doing enough, Alara." That made me feel a little better, but the old hurt still stayed deep inside me. I kept my life secret because I didn't want to show off, and I didn't want my family to use me. Orion would always want money for his ideas, and Mom and Dad would ignore me or favor him. So I stayed quiet, letting my company grow in secret. My money, my invention, my victories, they were all mine. One summer, our family had a barbecue in Carmel. The backyard smelled like grilled burgers and fresh summer grass. I felt like a stranger in my own family. Orion brought his new girlfriend, Sable Quinn, who was an Instagram influencer. She had a big smile and always seemed to be the center of attention. They cornered me by the picnic table, excitedly pitching a new idea for an app. "This app will make personalized travel plans for everyone," Orion said. "We need $1 million to start it. You're doing well, so why not help us?" I looked at the fancy pitch deck Sable had put together. It was full of bright colors and buzzwords, but there was no real plan, no research, nothing to prove it would work. "This won't work," I said calmly. "You haven't shown any proof that people would use it. You haven't checked if anyone else is doing the same thing. Your plan is not solid." Orion got angry. "You're just jealous," he shouted. Sable added, "You're too selfish to help." I stayed calm. "He needs a better plan," I said. But they didn't want advice. They just wanted my money. Later, Dad pulled me aside. "Why can't you help your brother?" he asked, sounding disappointed. Mom joined in. "Orion has vision. You could learn from him," she said. Their words hurt. I had built a huge biotech company from nothing, but to them, I was the problem. Aunt Linnea tried to calm things. "Alara is just being practical," she said softly. But it didn't fix the feeling of being left out. Orion sulked by the grill, and Sable was on her phone while Mom and Dad fussed over them. I felt judged for being careful and not giving money. I said quietly to Aunt Linnea, "I'm not the bank." She nodded, looking sad, as if she knew I was drifting away from my family. The rest of the evening was a blur. Orion and Sable kept glancing at me, whispering to each other. Mom kept praising Orion's bold ideas, telling neighbors about his failed apps like they were trophies. I stayed quiet, helping with cleanup to avoid arguments. Inside, I was angry, not just at them, but at how they called me ungrateful. They didn't know about my company, my money, my life. And I wasn't sure they deserved to know. I realized my silence wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about keeping what I had earned for myself. They didn't see me, and I was done trying to make them. As months passed, I kept building my company. We got more patents, hired more people, and my invention reached more hospitals. I was proud, but I still avoided visiting Carmel unless I had to. Every holiday visit reminded me of how my parents only saw Orion as the star. Even though he kept failing, they still praised him. And even though I was doing things that were saving lives, they barely noticed me. That Christmas, we had a family dinner. The dining room in my parents' Carmel home glowed with warm candlelight. The table was full of roast turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, and pumpkin pie. I sat quietly, ready for the usual family drama. Orion the favorite, me invisible. But that night, everything changed. Orion held up his phone, his face twisted with anger. "So, Alara," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "when were you going to tell us you have $10 million? He waved a news article about my biotech company. Everyone in the room froze. Mom looked shocked. Dad's jaw dropped. Aunt Linnea's eyes widened, but she stayed quiet. I felt a mix of anger and relief. Finally, my family knew about my success. But I wasn't sure if I wanted them to know after all these years of being ignored. Orion's face was red. He had spent years failing, always needing help. And suddenly he found out that I had built something amazing without them ever noticing. "Why didn't you tell us?" he demanded. "We could have helped you." I shook my head. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want people to treat my success like something they could take from me. I worked hard, and I did it on my own. You don't get to take credit for it. Mom tried to speak, but I held up a hand. "I'm done being ignored and judged. I wanted to help you succeed, but only if you worked hard and planned carefully. You didn't. And now, after everything, I don't owe anyone anything." Aunt Linnea reached over and held my hand. "You've done the right thing, Alara," she whispered. "You've built something incredible. They'll have to respect you now." Orion muttered under his breath, and Sable looked shocked. Dad and Mom didn't know what to say. For once, I felt like I wasn't invisible. My success wasn't hidden anymore. It was mine, and no one could take it from me. That night, I realized something important. My family didn't understand me, and maybe they never would. But I had learned to stand strong, to protect myself, and to celebrate my achievements, even if no one else noticed. I didn't need their approval anymore. My company, my invention, my hard work, it was all real, and it was mine. Even though the Christmas dinner had been tense, I felt free. For the first time, I didn't feel small in my family's eyes. I had built a life that mattered, a company that mattered, and I had proven that I could succeed without anyone's help. And that was worth more than anything. From that day on, I decided I would visit Carmel only when I wanted to, and I would never let anyone make me feel small again. I would continue building my company, helping people with my invention, and living my life the way I wanted. Orion could keep his ideas and Mom and Dad could keep their favoritism. I had my own success, my own happiness, and that was enough. My secret was finally out. The whole room went completely quiet. Mom's fork dropped onto her plate with a loud clatter. Dad frowned and stared at me. Orion's girlfriend, Sable, leaned forward with a smirk like she knew exactly what would happen. "You've been hiding this from us while we needed help," Orion shouted, slamming his phone onto the table so hard it bounced a little. "You're so selfish." Sable leaned closer and said, "Come on, Orion, demand your share. Don't let her keep it all." I gripped my napkin tightly, my hands shaking. My heart was beating really fast. For years, I had kept my success a secret. I knew this would happen. I knew they wouldn't feel proud of me. They would only see money. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Selfish," I said, my voice calm but strong. "Let's talk about fairness. I paid for my own college. I worked at a coffee shop while you got a Jeep just for failing your driving test, Orion. I asked Mom and Dad for money to start my business, and you said no. But you gave Orion $50,000 for his first bad app and more money for his next failure. I worked hard and you ignored me. The words kept coming out of me like a dam breaking. I built my company all by myself. You never cared until you saw dollar signs. You only want money now. Orion's face turned bright red. You think you're better than us? He yelled. You kept your money while we needed help. Sable crossed her arms, leaning back with a smug look. Family shares, Alara. That's how it works, she said, her voice sharp. I laughed bitterly, a sound that echoed in the quiet room. Family? Where was my family when I worked double shifts to pay for school? Where was the family when I shared my ideas, and you just shrugged and ignored me? Aunt Linnea, sitting quietly nearby, tried to help. Alara's right, she said softly. She earned this on her own. But her words were drowned out by Orion's glare and Sable's smirk. Mom sat there looking stunned, her face pale, unable to say anything. Dad shook his head slowly, muttering, You should have told us, Alara. Not proud, not happy, just blaming me for keeping my secret. I looked at Mom, hoping she would finally say something kind. But she didn't. She just stared at her plate, her lips tight, offering nothing. The silence in the room was heavier than any yelling. My chest ached, not from sadness, but from knowing they didn't really see me. They only saw my bank account. Sable leaned toward Orion, whispering loud enough for me to hear. She owes you, babe. Push harder. That was it. I grabbed my coat from the chair, my hands trembling. I don't owe you anything, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. I've spent my life proving myself to a family that never noticed. I'm done. I walked out the door, the smell of turkey and roasted vegetables fading behind me. Orion shouted after me, You're turning your back on us. I didn't turn around. Mom stayed silent. Dad looked disappointed. Sable wanted money. That was all they cared about. Aunt Linnea followed me to the porch, her eyes wet with tears. Alara, please, she said, holding my arm gently. They're wrong, but don't shut us out. I love you, Aunt Linnea, I said, hugging her tight. But I can't keep doing this. I need to protect myself. I stepped into the cold December air. My breath made small clouds in front of me. That night, I drove back to Indianapolis, leaving the bright lights of Carmel behind. I wasn't just leaving for dinner. I was leaving a family that had never truly cared about me. My wealth, my work, my life, they were mine alone, and I would protect them from anyone who only wanted money. After that Christmas, I didn't go back. My phone buzzed with messages from Mom, Dad, and Orion. I didn't answer. I let them pile up. I had spent years chasing their approval, and now that I had success, I didn't need it. Their calls went to voicemail. Their texts went unanswered. I wasn't being mean. I was choosing freedom. I was protecting the life I had worked so hard to build. Orion's life started to fall apart. He spent what little money he had on a risky cryptocurrency plan, chasing quick riches. The market crashed. He lost everything. Sable disappeared as soon as his bank account ran dry. He left me a voicemail complaining, but I never returned his call. He moved into a small, rundown apartment, scraping by on odd jobs. The golden child that Mom and Dad had always spoiled was now struggling to survive, all on his own. Weeks later, a letter came from Mom and Dad. Their handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged on thin paper. We're proud of you, Alara, they wrote. But the words felt empty. It was too late. They had chosen Orion over me too many times. I read the letter once, then tucked it away, not willing to meet them halfway. I wasn't angry anymore, I said to myself. I was done. Aunt Linnea called one evening. I understand why you're pulling away, she said softly. But don't shut me out too. I need time, I told her gently. She didn't push. Her sigh stayed in my mind, a reminder of the family I had once hoped for but could not fully trust. I turned all my focus to my company in Indianapolis. I poured my energy into a new project, a medical device that could detect infections in seconds. It was risky, much riskier than my first business, but I loved the challenge. Investors lined up, hospitals started using the device, and my company grew fast. My wealth grew too, but more importantly, my work helped save lives. That felt better than any approval from my family ever could. I also started a $500,000 scholarship for kids like me, students who were overlooked, working hard, and dreaming big but struggling to pay for school. At the scholarship launch, a young woman came up to me with tears in her eyes. This will let me study biology without working 3 jobs, she said. Her gratitude touched me in a way that no family praise ever could. I had built something meaningful. Not just for me, but for kids like her who had big dreams. Meanwhile, Orion's life stayed difficult. Without Mom and Dad's handouts, he couldn't get back on track. He did odd jobs, barely making enough money to pay rent. Dad and Mom, who used to bail him out of trouble, were now alone in their Carmel house. They had lost touch with both of us. Looking back, I see the lesson clearly. Being independent pulled me through years of unfairness and turned my pain into strength. Favoritism, like Mom and Dad showed Orion, doesn't just hurt the ignored person. It destroys the family. I didn't need their approval to thrive, but I wished they had seen it sooner, for everyone's sake. My story isn't just about me. It's a warning and also a hope for anyone trying to be seen. Thank you for listening. I hope my journey can help you. Have you ever faced hard times? Did anyone ignore your efforts or take what you worked for? What did you learn from your struggles? Your story matters, just like mine does. Even now, I remember Aunt Linnea's support. She was the one family member who truly saw me. I kept my distance from everyone else, but I stayed close to her. She reminded me that sometimes one kind person can make all the difference. I poured everything into my work, my company, and the scholarship fund. I wanted to make life easier for students who were overlooked. I wanted to give them the chance to study and chase their dreams without having to struggle as I did. When I saw young students cry tears of happiness because they could finally afford school, I realized that my success wasn't just about money. It was about making a difference. It was about creating a life that mattered, not for family approval, but for real impact. Meanwhile, Orion struggled. He tried to start over but failed many times. Without Mom and Dad supporting him like before, he didn't know how to handle real challenges. He took small jobs and barely managed to pay bills. The life he had taken for granted had disappeared, and he had no one to blame but himself, and partly the parents who always chose him over me. Mom and Dad rarely left the house after that. Their social circle shrank, and neighbors whispered about their broken family. They had lost the respect and love of both their children because they showed favoritism. I kept working. I kept building. My company grew, and my medical device helped hospitals save lives. My scholarship fund supported students in Indiana who, like me, had been overlooked but had big dreams. I learned that being independent and standing up for yourself is sometimes the only way to survive unfairness. Favoritism can destroy families, but determination, hard work, and caring for others can create something beautiful. Even though I didn't get the validation I wanted from my parents, I found something better: purpose. I realized that helping others and proving my own worth mattered more than their praise. This story isn't just mine. It's for anyone who has worked hard, been ignored, or faced unfairness. It's for anyone who needs to be seen and appreciated for who they are, not for what they can give others.